It is time to practice creative, critical, and self-awareness prompts with you all. And I have challenged myself to share this piece of content with you after deliberating with myself. I thought, I don't think you're ready to go forward with this video because your thoughts are all over the place and you have to come correct. You cannot come incorrect. You must come correct. You must have all the data. You must have all the things to back you up. So don't put this video out if you're not ready. So then I thought to myself, get creative with your thinking, because that's going to lead you to a place where you're going to procrastinate and you're never going to put this video out. You're not going to be able to show the world how passionate you are becoming about this subject. This subject being DEI. Have you heard about it? If you clicked on this video, you might have heard about it. And I had thought, wow, this DEI concept, this DEI experience, I like it. I like what I believe it's supposed to be, but I've learned that some people are actually against DEI. So then I thought, oh my goodness, what am I missing? And do I not have the words together? Am I missing something? Because from the surface level, DEI seems like good stuff. Is it not good stuff? Is it not good stuff? I'm talking to no one here but the camera, but you. Do you believe that DEI is an issue? I'm challenging myself because I'm going to watch a video where a person has shared. I'm going to share it with you. This person says that DEI invites unwholesome thinking and it creates bad people. And I say, whoa, that is a lot. So this is why this is a challenge for me, and I'm inviting you all into this world, this bubble of mine where I'm peeking out and I'm trying to get an understanding of why people think the way that they do, or why we have so much controversial, and why I think that it should all be kumbaya. It's things that I'm also uncovering about myself, because apparently we have to have both the bad and the good. And since I've been reading through the Bible, it's like, okay, the bad and the good is all in there. And all things work together for the good. So let me see how this plays out. Before I get into the video, I'm going to share with you all, for those who don't know what DEI is, I'm just going to break this down based off the words in DEI. So D is diversity. E is equity. Equity. And I is inclusion. Let's dig into diversity. This refers to the presence of differences with a given setting. This can include differences in race, gender, age, religion, disability, sexual orientation, socioeconomic status, education, national origin, and the list goes on. It's really captivating. The diversity is recognizing and valuing differences in individuals and groups. Equity involves ensuring fair treatment, access, opportunity, and advancement for all people, while striving to identify and eliminate barriers that have prevented the full participation of some groups. The focus of equity recognizes the advantages and barriers exist, and that as a result, we don't all start from the same place. Equity is a process that begins by acknowledging that unequal starting place and makes a commitment to correct and address the imbalance. Ooh, okay. Inclusion is the practice of creating environments in which any individual or group can be and feel welcome, respected, supported, and valued to fully participate. An inclusive and welcoming climate embraces differences and offers respect in words and actions for all people. If you know me just a little bit, if you don't know me at all, I'm going to introduce myself. My name is Danny, and this is my jam. Great conversation, diversity of thought, and also thinking on the good. So I'm thinking, okay, hello, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Equity and inclusion. And this could be fine, but I'm one of those people that I have to think this through, especially when I hear raw. Okay, I hear raw when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I've heard it from this person, this creator. His name is Charlie Kirk. Here's my challenge, and here's the practice that I'm going to introduce to you all. I want to go through this video, and I want to be transparent about all the ideas that come up from this video, the questions that come up from this video. But I also have to say that I don't have all the answers, and I'm still on a journey trying to figure out the disconnect between those who are for DEI and those who are against it. Because on the surface level, who doesn't like diversity, equity, and inclusion? That's crazy. But maybe I am the crazy one. I'm crazy. I'm not crazy. I can't put that on myself. Woo! Correct it in person. I can't put that on myself, but I think this is interesting. And so before I talk longer than I wanted to talk, let's look at this video, and I'm going to pause it at certain points because I have to tell you what my ideas are. So let's do it.
You got yourself in some trouble online because you're always stirring up trouble online.
Oh,
reacting
such
to
a troublemaker.
You are a troublemaker reacting to a June 2021 clip, but it was making the rounds on X, of the CEO of United Airlines, Scott Kirby, talking about their quotas over at United for diversity in the ranks of pilots, which is extremely controversial for obvious reasons. Here's the clip that you were reacting to in South 13.
Military. How is diversity and diversity targets working into the Aviate Academy?
We have committed that 50% of the class of the classes will be women or people of color. Today, only 19% of our pilots at United Airlines are women or people of color. And by the way, from all the data I've seen, that's the highest of any airline in the country.
White males don't just dominate in the cockpits, also in the C-suite at United Airlines.
Well, look, at United, I'm proud of the diversity that we actually have in our C-suite. I think if you look around corporate America.
Correct me if I'm saying though, so this was just based off your website, the people you list as executives, but out of 11 people, 3 are women. I believe 1 is a person of color.
That's correct. But, in corporate America, I think,
That's a low bar. How do you raise your own bar?
Well, a lot of this is, focusing on it. We have programs one of the things we do is for every job when we're doing an interview, we require women and people of color to be involved in the interview process.
Shut up. Oh, I'm sick of this nonsense.
It's so repulsive.
All right, so wait, let me finish it by your reaction to it. And people freaked out because you said the thing that you're not supposed to say, but that's what you're known for. Here he is in SOT 14 on the Charlie Show.
And that's why I think this United story and the DEI story hits so hard, because we've all been in the back of a plane when the turbulence hits or when you're flying through a storm and you're like, I'm so glad I saw the guy with the right stuff and the square jaw get into the cockpit before we took off. And I feel better now.
You want to go thought crime? Like, I'm sorry, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
Well, you wouldn't have done that.
Okay, so I'm going to stop right there because this is probably one of the moments where I thought I got semi-triggered. I'm not going to say that I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe he said that, because I have practiced a long time with this idea that everything that someone says doesn't have to ruin my life and my world. But I will say that my question here was, why was that the first thing that came into this person's mind? But then I had to correct myself. Let me tell you why I had to correct myself. I'm actually nervous about saying this, so have grace on me, because I'm inspired by this creator. His name is Charlie Kirk, for being so transparent with those thoughts that you don't say out loud, but you think them. And the reason why I am inspired by this is because there are a lot of things that we have been keeping to ourselves. We're not having these open conversations. And I think that's what's creating more separation, is that we are creating these storylines that are non-existent. We don't know why we think the things that we do. Some of them are part of our upbringing, but from my upbringing, there wasn't any conversation about race. So I have a different perspective as I navigate the earth. I don't always feel the same experiences that people who share the same color as me, or who think I should have the same upsetness that my color in America should have. So here we have Charlie Kirk. He says something that this line is almost like, whoa, what are you doing here? This is crazy. Why would you say something like this?
You want to go thought crime? Like, I'm sorry, if I see a black pilot, I'm going to be like, boy, I hope he's qualified.
And I'm going to say that I think the same way when I go to the doctors and my doctor doesn't share the same color skin as me. I need my doctor to look like me. And one of the reasons why I think the doctor should look like me is because, people who don't look like me don't understand me as much as the person who looks like me. The other part, which I'm so embarrassed to say, is that I always think that the doctor could possibly be racist and not care about the things that go on with me because they don't understand who I am, or take a little bit of time to think about the differences in dealing with me and dealing with the person that looks like them, or any of the rainbow. Okay, so I shared this in a different way, where I'm not automatically shouting for joy if my doctor doesn't look like me. When I see my doctor look like me, I'm like, I feel safe. One, I'm assuming, and here go my assumptions, I'm assuming that the doctor that looks like me is going to take better care of me. I'm also assuming that the doctor who doesn't look like me might not care about me. And I wonder where that comes from. So when he says this, I have to give grace because I think the same way in a reverse way. And I also think about this because this I've learned from this clip and one other clip from this young man that he talks about data a lot. And I recently came across data where it talked about serial killers and which group of people were the most serial killers. And I thought, if this group of people are the most serial killers, then shouldn't we be concerned about them being our doctors?
What race has the highest number of serial killers?
Fucking white dudes.
You think so?
It's fucking Caucasian dudes.
You don't even want to give it a shot?
Nope.
You're white.
It's Caucasian dudes.
Really?
Yes.
What do you think?
Can I hear the options first?
Well, there's really no options. There's percentages. So, I mean, white dudes are definitely in there, but what do you think the percentages are?
Of serial killers?
Of all the serial killers in the world, in the history of the universe, what is the percentage?
Percentage of the most.
I'm
going at least 40, bro. 51%
what?
Caucasian males. White males.
White men. It's 82% white men.
Tell you, bro. That's
82%.
I would not guess 82, but I knew it was them. God damn, man.
15% is black. And then the other percentages are the other ethnicities. So they're way down there. I think it's like 5% or 4% or something low like that.
Do you guys ever see those racist comment sections of people going, well, whenever they see like one black guy stealing a candy bar or something? They go, well, as if all black people steal stuff. But for serial killers, I want to go, well.
It's
killers.
It's true.
What percent again?
82%.
Okay, I was going to say if it was like 50, maybe because there's so many white people, but
No,
82%.
That's kind of crazy, folks. What is that?
So if all black people steal, does that mean all white people kill?
All black people like chicken.
I didn't say that.
Look, all black people like chicken. I'll take that. I'll take it. Because we do. We like some chicken. But isn't that crazy? 82%.
I would love to find out why, bro. I knew it was white males, but I would love to find out why. I don't know. Let me ask you, since all white people kill.
How many people have you killed, Colby?
Don't look at it like that.
Isn't that crazy?
That's not a good look. That's way up there, bro.
Or shouldn't we be concerned? And that's silly, right? Isn't that silly? Because if this is clipped up, I am admitting that that's silly to say. It's silly for me to think that because the percentage of this group of people is the number one for serial killers, that group of people should be, okay? It's a concern. Now, because there's intelligence, emotional intelligence, there's thoughtfulness and mindfulness, I don't go around thinking that if I have a white doctor that I'm going to be in harm, because even though that's a small little thought in my head, that was a creative thought that I created for myself just because of the narratives around me. I hope that this is going to be pulled out a little bit because I want to bring this home with some of the other things that he said.
You wouldn't have done that before. That's not an immediate. No, you wouldn't have done that before. That's not who I am. That's not what I believe.
It is the reality the left has created.
Oh, this is so good. I didn't even know how good this was until he just said that. So the other person in the interview says that is the reality that the left created. What's so interesting about statements like this is that we always give ownership of our thoughts to other people instead of doing something about it ourselves. So when I can take ownership of the thought that I'm a little bit skeptical of having a doctor that doesn't look like me, but I also can say, that's a story I created. I don't know if this doctor has any bad ill, and I don't want to create that reality for myself. I don't want to think so far into the negative that I actually make experience for myself when I have the worst doctor, because in my life experience, and this is just mine because I know people have very bad experience, I have had good experiences going to the doctor. I've had good experiences in education. From my perspective, I have not had these experiences that make me feel like people are out to get me based on the color of my skin. I have not had that. I've also had experience of people sharing my color and people not sharing my color being wonderful, supportive in my world and in my life. So I lean towards that, and I continue to lean towards that. And so far, so good. The other thing that the person says in the video, and this is Charlie Kirk, this is not who I am. this is who you are though. Part of this concept of being authentic is that someone being 100% authentic might not be a beautiful thing. Your 100% authenticity also means that you're going to show up with the flaws and the unlikable parts. But what we do with that authenticity is I realize that this is something that I can work on, and it's up to me to work on it so that I can become who I want to be. And then I would say here, right when he says this is not who I am, then this is why we have to have these conversations. Because the reason why you blame the person in the video, and this is all me creating a storyline. So let's just sit there. I don't know exactly how this person thinks beyond what he shared with us. But I would assume if I was in his position, I would assume that I'm thinking this because there's something in my history. There's something that has been exposed to me. There's some narrative that has been told to me or that I'm creating that makes me think that. And so I am owning that thought. And the only way I can disown that thought is if I do have these hard conversations. All right, so let's go into the rest of the video.
The meltdown after this with people like, oh, and the proper response was from people like Matt Walsh, this is the world you people have created. You have created this world where you make somebody's skin color the sole criterion for hiring, and then you react in horror when people wonder whether the qualifications are also there. The nerve to get so indignant about your reaction to that. This is their world. You're just living in it.
Yes, and I want to just reiterate.
I want to talk about and Megyn Kelly, this is her video. This is credit to her video. So I'm sharing her video. So who knows if this video will stay up or not, if I get a strike for it. But here I am trying out this YouTube world. This is interesting because she's saying a statement. She's saying you people. And I remember growing up and someone would say you people, and then people would react like, what you mean you people? And I just never got it. I understand this is the way that people talk in their language. And when Megyn Kelly here, she's talking about you people. She's talking about, I believe, the left. If I am wrong, correct me. And the left is doing all this work. The left is doing all this work where the people, if they're on the right, I'm not sure, if they're on the right, now these people on the left are making you become a negative thinker because of the story that they're creating. So we have this influence and impact on each other, and it's going in a direction where now we're giving all of our ownership of our own thoughts to the people who are seemingly doing all the wrong things. But we, in all the other areas that are right, we can have ownership. We can have ownership of the data. We can have ownership of what the right thing is, but we can't have ownership of why do I think this way? What is the question behind this? And so I would challenge anyone who also shares these beliefs. Why do you actually think that it upsets you so much to have diversity, equity, and inclusion? Is it really because people are creating this world that you think is bad, or do you only look at the bad parts of it? Have you not considered what it means to be diverse, to have equity and inclusion? Or have you only created thought processes that lean on the bad? And now I want to go to the next question. What's so bad about diversity, equity, and inclusion? And I believe that Charlie continues this in the narrative. So
the essence of that clip that was missed by almost everybody, Jordan Peterson, to his credit, really picked up on it, which is what I was trying to be, very vulnerable with the audience, is that DEI invites unwholesome thinking. And I said, and I was saying in the clip, that's not who I am. That's not what I believe. But what it does is it makes us worse versions of ourselves, Megyn. That's the whole point of what I was saying, is that I now look at everything through a hyper-racialized diversity quota lens because of their massive insistence to try to hit these ridiculous racial hiring quotas. Of course, I believe anybody of any skin color can become a qualified pilot. That has never been my contention. I mean, it's silly. It's bigoted to think otherwise, right? What I was saying, though, is when you currently have less like 3 to 4% of current pilots are blacks right now, 3 to 4%. And now they want to say this is just a hiring class of candidates. Are there enough candidates to fill the 50% quota? And the other question should be asked is, why is it a problem? Let's just ask the premise. Why is it a problem that 81% are white? And I love the Axios guy. Well, white males are dominating the cockpit. Yeah, those pesky safe flights are dominating our society, Megyn. all those.
I think there's credibility in one saying that you want to have safe flights, and that saying statements such as we need to reach a quota, or 80% of these men are white, lean towards some discomfort with DEI, but not too much. And this is why, to point out the 3% of Black people that is, in diversity, the diversity pilots. Forgive me, I don't know where my thoughts are. To point out where the diversity is as it relates to the hiring of the Black pilots, it points out different questions for me. One is, I don't really know how true this is, and this is why I say I have to carry this out a little bit longer. But there is some understanding that there was a woman who was Black, who was a pilot, long ago, was doing well. And from a woman like her, that representation can also birth other people who believe in themselves to do it. Now, it's not just about someone believing, oh, I can be a pilot. We have to understand that there is qualifications. Would anybody just put any person inside the seat of a pilot and say fly because of the color of your skin? I don't think this is the case. I will need to have the data on that. And I will also need to have the data on the fact that these diversity hires, did they crash all the planes? Where is that fear coming from? Do we have data that the diversity hires have crashed all the planes? And have we had the data that those who are those 80% white pilots have always landed safe? Have we not had issues with those of a different color, maybe drinking and driving away his sorrows and crashing a plane? Has that not been the case? So this is why it's just so interesting, because we often forget that it's really nothing to do with a person's color. It's really about the decision making. It's about the content. It's about the effort they put into learning something. Where we have to leave room and space for is the reason why it might be 3% is because there has been a lack of, guess what, equity. There has been a lack of, guess what, inclusion in education itself. So those same people who are the 80% white men who are in the pilot seats, they had access to education that maybe those who have a different color just haven't had it, or there's been a stunt in growth because of things that have been against them for years. And so yes, it might be some catching up for those who have a different color so that it's more equity. But diversity, equity, and inclusion doesn't mean, from my perspective, and I think this is another conversation we have to get into, from my perspective, it does not mean, hey, because of your color, you get in. What it means is, we're not going to remove you from this experience because of your color. But if you don't qualify, you don't qualify. And it's also fair to say that there are some industries where you might be an advocate for DEI, and so you might just look for all of the people of color or all of the people who have differences and bring them in because you want to see more diversity. And there has to be some checks and balances there, because it also still has to be equity amongst all of us. We have to pull out, and I said I had a lot of thoughts here because I'm going to just share all the thoughts that I can, but I want to get into these a little bit more intentionally with some data to back it up. But we have to talk about this idea that diversity, equity, and inclusion is a bad idea because we lean towards the bad idea and we can't strip out any good of it. If he has an issue, or if anyone has an issue with diversity, equity, and inclusion, we have to go back to the root question. Why did people start creating a system like this? Was it that we had a system where we all treated each other with the love that we had? Let's say, and I know we all don't believe in the same thing, but let's say you believed in the Bible. In the Bible, it says God is love, and you had a healthy relationship with God and you experienced love. And so because of that healthy relationship with God, you feared God, you kept his commandments, and those commandments led towards you treating others with love, treating others with respect. Let's say that was the case. If the world operated with just those two principles, even if you didn't believe, but you just treated others with love that you had for yourself, and so that you lean that towards others, then what we have to have systems in place to say, oh, now we need to have diversity, equity, and inclusion. No, because there would have been order. So there has to be a conversation where we say, there probably hasn't been diversity, equity, and inclusion, and that's why these people are crying about it. That's why they're out here saying that they need it, because it wasn't there in the first place. What was happening for people to feel like they needed a whole system called diversity, equity, and inclusion to help them in this earth? I believe that's the icky part. When he says this is not who I am, and it makes us have to have more questions. Well, it's because we kind of stopped having a conversation. We went through all these things, all these different systems, treat people like humans, but we never talked about, did y'all think that was messed up? Y'all didn't think that was messed up? Y'all didn't think that was messed up? There was something wrong. You might not be doing that today to people, but we all are products of our ancestors. So we have to admit that there has to be some psychological damages on both sides. If for a long time you lived, or you were the product of ancestors who were killing and stealing and putting babies into alligators' mouths, raping wives of other people, and having people enslaved for a long time, you might have some problems going on with yourself. On the other side, we have people who were the product of this, and so they might have some problems with the barriers they keep having with these psychological damages. The psychological damages, we have to invite that to the conversation. I don't think people just come up and say, hey, give us diversity, equity, and inclusion, because we already had it. It's been a great world, and now we need this. Okay, so this video is going to be a little long, so if you guys are here with me, just know that I am becoming passionate about this DEI subject, and I thank Charlie Kirk for being transparent, for being vulnerable in his words, because it allows me to say, hey, you have been vulnerable and you shared yourself, you shared something true and authentic about yourself, and I have to share myself and be honest about the things that I also think about people outside of me from time to time. I don't live in these thoughts. I believe that most of these are stories. So when I say, hey, if that doctor doesn't look like me, he might be a serial killer, that is really short-lived, because I know that it's been nonsense and I understand the manipulation. So from what I hear between the right and the left, the right also feels like the left manipulates a lot, but then we have to take ownership. If you're on the right, do you ever feel like you are also being manipulated by certain concepts? I think the whole idea of having a right and left it just seems really odd. We're not looking at the issue at hand. We just want our point to be right because we're on this side or we're on that side. But what about just the principle itself? Can it just be, for lack of better words, well, it is a good word, I'm gonna have to say it, is it righteous? Is it a righteous principle? Is it right? And this is not leaning to a right side with righteousness, because we have seen some things on both sides that's just really odd. And every single side is going to have a plant of somebody who's messing it up for everybody. So if you believe the whole story, you have to believe that there are also people on each side that's making it seem worse than it needs to be. I'm not sure if there's more that I wanted to say about this particular clip. From what I gathered from Charlie Kirk is DEI creates bad people, and he realizes this is experience is not who he is, and he kind of goes in through, proving this. But before I go into another clip with Charlie Kirk and try to bring this all together, I just want to get these thoughts out that I had, these questions that come up from just experiencing this. So one, I want those who have the same thought process as Charlie Kirk to think about the barriers of Black people, right? Because there's this conversation about Black people, and the conversation is always that they have created this issue themselves. And actually, let me just play this clip before I get into this, because I think this might give us a little bit of context on Charlie Kirk's view. I might be saying this sentence wrong, so have grace as I try to figure this out in my life, y'all. Some people will identify me as a Black person living in America. I identify myself as somebody surviving Earth and figuring it out. So if that was on the application, I am checking that off. Okay, so let's share this one.
Believe in reparations for people that are
so I, white man, have to play for Black people. Why?
Wow, that's a really selfish thing you
said. Hold on. Why should
That's a really non-empathetic thing to say.
Wait, why should I have empathy for a race?
People. I'm not saying for you.
Why should the white students here have to work harder to pay for Black kids? What is that all about? That's not racist. That's noticing. How is it the white man's fault that Black men started to abandon the women?
It's a bigger problem.
No, Blacks need to take responsibility for the women that they impregnate, not blame the white man for racism.
Things affect this.
Why didn't it affect the Asians? Why did the Asians do so well? America got less racist and the Blacks got poorer because we started to subsidize single motherhood and pandering to Blacks, saying you do not need to stay around with your women who are pregnant.
So you feel like us as a society has pandered?
Of course we pander to Blacks. They're in every TV commercial. They get more privileges to come into society. They come into every college on preferential with lower test scores. You can't ever say anything negative. You can lose your job. You will have your entire life obliterated you say something racist. And yet we have to hear about how racist we are. How about you take responsibility for your own actions instead of blaming the white man?
I have to say, sir, you are a very good job.
This is actually really good, and it helps me understand Charlie a little bit more. What's so good about this is, one, first of all, I did not know that Black people were in all the commercials. When I was growing up, I always thought, why aren't Black people in all the commercials? I didn't know that Black people were in all the commercials, but it's just interesting how we have different experiences and different views in the world, because I literally had this thought from a youth that I only see one person that looks like me, and then there's 7 people that all look the same. They didn't even have that diversity there. I believe in this diversity so much because I like the diversity of thought more than I think that we have to have like all these different things going on. The diversity of thought that comes from all of our background experiences is so beautiful, and it's a lot. It keeps me from being in a bubble and thinking, oh, the world is only these people that look like me and only these experiences. I want to know about other people's experiences. I want to see how close that we are together and what stories we're making up, because we're separating ourselves in these little cult-like experiences based off of the color of our skin. Anyway, here, one thing I want to point out about this clip, and one thing that inspired me to start with this conversation and to better myself, to be more advanced in my arguments, or not even arguments because I'm just having a discussion, is that this person who's speaking with Charlie Kirk is trying to get a point across with feelings. Just like me, I have all these feelings, but there's this idea that these facts that come from data, which could be skewed to fit someone's argument, but to have these facts and to have a history attached to whatever you're saying in order for it to be carried home. So what my goal is here is, when Charlie Kirk starts to talk about the Black man, and he says that the Black men are impregnating these families, and it's their fault, not the other person's fault, another color's fault. I think it's not the other color's fault today, but again, is there room to consider any psychological damage? I was not there during slavery, but as the storytellers have told, slave owners were raping the wives of these Black men. Slave owners were putting Black men in a position where they were impregnating all these women, and they didn't have that Black man because most of the time they were sold or given away or beaten or killed or hung on a tree. And these are things where it seems so simple to put 2 and 2 together. Like, oh, if they're not showing up today, it's still a choice, right? I, for a long time, could not lean on the history of slavery as my default for anything wrong in a particular culture, because I came from a family who also were descendants, and they made choices that didn't lean towards the negative. But I thought, we all are built differently. We all have different experiences. And sometimes the fact that we have more, the fact that we were given more intelligence or more self-awareness or more discernment or more love, put us in a position to actually gift that to those who might not have as much discernment, who do react off of emotion, to show them a different perspective. And so if I was in this position and I thought, hey, I don't believe I'm responsible for reparations, I would also not in the same breath think that there's nothing to consider as it relates to why a whole culture is, or a whole group of people are the way that they are today, and dismiss that history of it all. I would also, this conversation about reparation is this very strong conversation, and I want to have this in another video. If you're interested, let me know in the comments. But I wanted to go through a lot of different thoughts on reparations, because as I live in my bubble, I say, I just want to survive Earth. But I also realize, hey, I want to live my mother-loving life here on Earth. And that's going to take some diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's also going to take good decision making. It's also primarily for me in my house, keeping that relationship with God, having my focus on Jesus when I'm walking across that water, all these waters and all these disputes and all these rights and lefts and all the things that I have to have a focus, feel secure in, that I have seen good fruits in. Now, I mentioned this before. I have not yet seen good fruit in the disputes that we had online. I don't see good fruits in people making fun of each other, or like having these, is it snarky or smarky? It's like snarky comments are like, oh, the left and oh, the right. Like, am I doing it right now? Oh, wait, I'm doing that right now. Practicing. Okay. I have not seen the good fruit in that. I have seen good fruit in the wisdom that can be applied. Now, on the other side, when we talk about all these different changes, all these differences in the earth and the world, I've had a conversation with people who believe that if we all came together, that it would be a problem, that it would be very similar to the Tower of Babel and trying to take down God. And I thought, man, that's crazy, because why do we lean to that and we can't lean towards scriptures like living peacefully amongst all men as much as we can? Why isn't that the go-to? Why isn't that we can't try to do that, although we have done all these things? I see beautiful structures. I use beautiful technology. It took a lot of thought and inspiration and processes to put these things together. And so DEI feels like one of those things where it's process. It's a lot of thought, and it's really hard for the person who has all the words, all the books, all the data. It seems very hard for them to just grab onto the simple concept of, hey, I probably should love myself enough so that I can love my neighbor as thyself. And then what else did I wanted to say before I close the video? Finding good people who know what they're talking about to share their things. Let's look at what this woman says. And I think it responds to a comment that Kirk would say, which I feel like if she was at the table with him, she might be able to expand this conversation. Again, we're going back to this diversity of thought coming from different people and experiences, so we can all come to the table and we can't make up these stories and say, well, why did they do it this way and they didn't? Let's look at what this lady has said. I thought she added some color to the conversation.
Descendant of immigrants who have come to the United States since the 1960s. I want you to take a look at this picture and keep this in mind if you ever have the question, or if you hear others have the question about, well, my parents came to this country, my grandparents, my great-grandparents came to this country with nothing, not speaking English, not knowing anyone, and they were able to make a life for themselves. Why can't Black Americans seem to do the same? So here's some homework for those of you who have that question, or if you hear others who have this question, take some time and look through Google to see what all of these things are. What is chattel slavery, specifically chattel slavery? You might have heard of Jim Crow. You probably haven't heard of Black codes. You probably haven't heard of some major racial massacres against Black folks in the United States and descendants of enslaved people. Maybe you have heard of redlining, but maybe you don't know about how the war on drugs is very much a racial issue. This is going to give anyone with these kinds of questions a really good sense as to just a sample of some of the things that Black Americans have had to face in this country that is very specific to their racialized experience, that folks who are immigrants or children of immigrants, grandchildren of immigrants who have come since the 1960s, that we have not had to deal with, and our parents and grandparents did not have to deal with.
So thank you from that creator, just bringing a little bit of diversity to the conversation. And again, I am inspired to do this video and many more that are going to be similar to this, because I feel like a place where it makes sense for me to include this creative thinking on the diversity of thought, but also to apply it to our self-awareness journey, because a lot of this has to do with our own decision-making. The thoughts that we choose. Are we going to choose life in our tongue, or are we going to choose death in our tongue? And I know that this is not as easy as it sounds, but this is why it takes practice. The same practice that it takes for the people who are getting into these schools and have the best scores, or who are getting into these pilot seats, or who are doctors. For them to become the best, they have to practice. And so we also have to create room for everyone to practice, to think on quality questions. Why do we even feel the way that we do? When he says that he feels icky and this is not the person he is, we have to understand why we even come to that point. And it takes hard conversations, right? It takes hard conversations on both sides. And although it's easy for us to be upset and to move on emotion, at some point we have to add some logic to the conversation. And we also have to add some accountability for our own world and how we react for today in the present. How are we going to move forward in today in the present? And so I want to leave off these other notes that I'm going to start exploring, because one thing is that sits with me is we just forget how a history or the things in our past can impact are today. And we also don't have enough power, or we're not tapping into the power that we have by focusing on a source that can pull us into the present and have us move forward. Where do we want to sit? We have a choice. We have a choice to say, hey, I understand all these things that happened in the past, but I have to do something now to enjoy this experience on earth. And that could be making the decision to say, hey, I'm just going to just get out of these disputes and live the best way I can possibly. And hopefully that's going to rub onto other people. But that might not be enough. You might be an advocate. You might need to get into these spaces. You might need to get into these rooms. But there's something about getting into these rooms and spaces with your data in place, with looking at the full story so that you can land properly. And then the last thing that I want to say is we've had experiences, and if anyone in the comment can help me with this, because I hear stories so much and I know that there's data around this, but I don't always have the data. So there are some experiences where in the past there were a group, there's Black America would build their own, they would be successful in their own, and because people who didn't look like them weren't succeeding at the same rate, they would tear that down. And those are the type of issues that causes this division, and those are the type of things that are dismissed in conversations when we think of it just on one side. Why didn't the Black people do this? Why didn't it? Well, was that happening to you on your side as much? Or if it was, share that part too. Bring that to the storyline as well, because we need to get into a group of diversity so we can say, hey, this happened to me, that happened to you. Oh, we all have these issues. So it's not just a Black thing. It's not just a white thing. You guys are doing things over there that's horrible, or doing things over there that's good, and so are you. Oh, okay. So then we're all being fooled, and we're all just fighting with each other, looking like silly people for the sake of what? Oh, let's just treat each other well. I don't know. That sounds so elementary, but I promise you, it really isn't supposed to be this difficult. We have gotten to a point where we think that we are saying a lot of words and a lot of data that makes it all sound like we just know what we're talking about, but we're not really saying anything effectively because we just want to be right. And I could be here practicing, thinking, saying what's right. It could not sit well with people that diversity could be helpful, that having a healthy conversation could be helpful, or not even going to the extent where we don't shame people for the right things. We're shaming people for maybe the color of their hair or what their hair looks like, but we're not shaming them for being bad people to one another. We're not shaming them for being unkind. We're not shaming them for stealing and killing and being dishonest and manipulative. We're not shaming them for that. Instead, we're shaming them because they don't got Jordans, or we're shaming them because they're not in a suit and they don't talk the correct way. Those are the things that we're shaming people for. When are we going to get to the point where all of that seems silly? Okay, I'm done with I think that might have came off a little preachy, but I hope that those who stuck with me. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm almost done, y'all, because I want to pull all this out in this video because I wrote these notes down for a reason, and I wanted to make sure I explore them in the coming videos. But this idea of nepotism, I believe that that's just happening in the workplace, but no one has really called that out. And it seems very similar to what the diversity, equity, and inclusion is. It's that, okay, because you are different, we're going to give you a chance. And now that is an uproar where in some cases where if you had a friend and he had a son and you brought him in with no qualifications, now that's worse than you doing that. And I can't say that Charlie Kirk has practiced that, so I'm not saying that for him. But that's also a realm where we're like, are we going to consider that that's almost the same thing, but you're more upset about this because why? Now, we don't want to operate with DEI in that way. As a woman who's going to be identified as Black, but identified as a person who's surviving Earth and exploring it and figuring it out, I do want the opportunity to show that it has nothing to do with color. If you teach me, if you give me the tools and resources, and I love what I do, all of my success comes from who I believe is my creator. And it comes from the relationship that I create with my creator. So if any success has nothing to do with me. And so that's another missing part, that we're leaning a lot on the individual man, where maybe on both sides, we need some type of, you need therapy! Here's the very, very last thing. Oh my goodness, I'm almost done, y'all. The very last thing. When I wanted to get into the space of diversity, equity, and inclusion, which I'm not completely in, and I'm just exploring with it right now, I said, hey, I realized that I have a faith system that dictates a lot of my decisions. And so with this faith system, can you be included? Because there's some people in the faith space for those who believe in the Bible, and I'm not even naming religion, but those who believe in the Bible, who have tainted it, who have made it cult-like, who have destroyed it and given it a bad name, that it doesn't even feel right putting this faith of mine in diversity, equity, and inclusion. But that's what I want to explore. I want to explore how I can still introduce that I'm different, I'm diverse, but my diversity comes from how my decision making is and how my thinking process is, because I'm using concepts and scriptures to help me with that. I'm even looking at the Bible and I'm identifying that there are some places in the Bible where it's not going to be inclusive, that there is differences and people are in these little pockets. But my relationship with God has given me a better understanding of the whole thing. But I wonder if this is true, that you can be diverse and have people who are different from you and still have healthy conversations. That's where I hope to lean into, is having these conversations, being different, but at the end of the day, finding what's that common denominator. Do we all want to have heaven on earth? If it's not heaven on earth, goodness on earth. If you want to fight on earth, then okay, I don't know what to give you. If you feel like complaining is going to be the thing that gets you over, I would love to see that all demonstrated well. Like I would say, I would want to see it. I complained about this, complaining I was just angry and I didn't have no solutions, and it helped me do this. I would love to see that. And I know that sounds very sarcastic because it is, but if it's true, I just want to see it. I want to see all the missing parts. I don't want to be so consumed in this idea of happiness and goodness that I don't leave room for the fact that it all works together, the bad and the good, but still for the good. I don't know. I'm done, y'all. I talked a lot, and apparently I am passionate, but I hope that those who stayed this long has some input in the comments, that you at least give this video a like and subscribe to figure out where I go with this journey. If I make any movements with thinking on the good, I am a practice here. I'm practicing mindfulness. I'm practicing applying the scriptures in my life that focuses on thinking on the good, applying storytelling in the way that actually does support not only myself, but the people around me. But that's it for today. I'm done. I think I got all my thoughts out, and that was my goal, to get all my thoughts out about a DEI. And I think, again, Charlie Kirk, the page that I shared, Megan Kelly, I hope, Megan Kelly, if you come to this page, that you allow it to stay, because I know that there's some rules around YouTube and sharing, but I was inspired by this video. I thought it was put together well because it hit all of the parts. I was interested in the video with the original video that Charlie was responding to, because I didn't see that originally. And I like how we saw the video where he says the comment that probably shakes the world. And then I like that she allowed him to give more context to what he was saying. But again, I encourage all of us who have one definitive thought and we can't see any other way around it to explore, is there another perspective to this? Am I missing a thought that might add to my understanding of, one, why I feel the way that I do, or two, how I can strengthen my argument if I really believe in what I'm saying. But I need to use diversity of thought. I can't just lean on my thought and the people around me who all agree with me. I have to see when people disagree with me as well, so I can see their perspective. Okay, I think that's it. Hold on to you as much as you can. Hold on to your health, your well-being, and your mind. Being mindful. Bye.